Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to my channel where today I will have a little look at the landscape stereo field, which is this quite stunning and photogenic synthesizer right here, which doesn't look like anything else. It has a very appealing look. It's symmetrical. It's got shining copper which looks a bit like traces on a circuit board, but it has it on the outside. And this also reveals a little bit of how this works, because the circuitry in this synthesizer is controlled entirely by making connections between these different circuits by touching more than one of these areas in this lovely and quite hypnotic design here. You can also make some connections with patch cables connecting different parts of the circuits together, and also all the patch points are switched so that when you patch something in, you are also breaking a connection that's already inside the system, that is normalized inside the synthesizer. It's called the landscape stereo field, and that is because it has two separate stereo circuits, one on each side of the user interface here. Stereo outputs, stereo inputs as well. And then you have these knobs which control, the inside knobs are controlling the signal strength from the inputs, and the outside knobs are controlling the signal to the output. But that's not all they do. They also control different parts of the circuitry, which means that using these knobs, which are very nice, by the way. I think these are the same kind of knobs that are used in Buchla synthesizers. Looks like it to me. Also will affect the sound in other ways, not just input volume and output volume, but a lot more than that. And it is played, as I say, by touch, by combining these different circuits in different ways. There are oscillators, there are LFOs, there are different filters, there are different things going on here. Maybe not filters. It doesn't sound like there's much filtering going on. And the output of this can be quite harsh and sharp and wild and unruly, which is also the reason why I put the Zoya in here today, because I want to also show that you can tame it a little bit with delay, reverb, and filtering to make the sound a little bit more pleasing. Another thing you can do with a stereo field is that all these outputs, including the audio ins and outs, can be both audio and CV, which means you can connect this to modular gear as control voltages. You can take audio or control voltage into it as well to be processed. I still haven't found very interesting uses of this as an audio processor. Basically, what happens with sound that comes into it is almost like a manual distortion circuit. So of course you play it through, and as you touch it, it gets distorted in different ways, which can be interesting, but it hasn't really been for me yet. Now, what I really like about this is it can create a lot of very random noises that can be used. A lot of it is like the kind of sounds you might hear as you're tuning your radio. For those who remember what that's like in the old days when you tuned your FM radio, especially if you were listening to what do you call it, the long wave radio and AM radio, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's a bit crazy, it's a bit bonkers, but it's interesting and it can create lots of noise. Now, I might do more than one video on this, because I want to make this video just about the sound of the device itself, and then maybe I'll do other videos where I talk a little bit more about using it together with modular gear and also as an audio processor. I want to separate those out. So I'm going to have to put my headphones on a little bit more now so I can hear what I'm doing. So first of all, let's just not connect any patch cables. I do have some patch cables standing by. Just to say what I'm doing with the Zoya now. So The audio comes into the Zoya, and then it is run into two filters, one for the left channel, one for the right channel, and the output of the filter is run into a delay, which is run into a reverb, and then to the output. At the moment, I have the delay set to off, and I have the reverb set to off. The filter is fully open, and also have the EQ from the reverb set to 0. So there's no coloring of sound at the moment. Everything that you hear right now is straight from the landscape without any modifications. And initially, of course, the left part here is the left channel. The right part is the right channel. Once you start plugging things in, of course, the channels get mixed in different ways. That means that touching one side will also create a proper, more sort of stereo kind of sound in itself. But otherwise, the overlap here between these channels is where you get sounds from both sides, and you're sort of merging them together. Now, as a general rule of thumb, according to the manual, there is a little manual, there's a one sheet where it just tells you a little bit. The deeper sounds are supposed to be at the top, and the higher pitches are further down. Now, because your capacitance will change over time, if you just go and wash your hands get a little bit damp, it will change. If the air is a little bit humid, it will change. The interaction between the modules inside here is so complex that it's very hard to analyze, even if you wanted to try, but perhaps you really shouldn't try, because one of the great things about a device like this, it is random, it can surprise you, it can give you new sounds, and also the thing about it is that you want to record when you play it, because there's no way you can replicate a sound, I mean, almost ever. Let's first see what happens now if I crank up the knobs. See, I'm not touching it now, but so these are the input knobs in the middle, output knobs. It's got a high-pitched sound. Now, you will notice there's a high-pitched sound that's in the background there, but if I move my hand just close to it now, not actually touching it, it's already affecting the sound. I think I need to reduce my output volume a little bit. Because now that I'm making a sound and there is a connection, the output knobs, well, right now certainly they mostly seem to be affecting just the output level. Inputs, I think, have more of an effect on. So it's also changing an LFO speed there. And at certain points, it seems like different parts of the circuitry are engaged. Because these sounds can be quite harsh, of course. Just move my hand a little bit there. Just wiggling my hand a bit. And as you can see, it has those sort of crazy radio sound noises. But actually, I do like recording stuff like that from the radio. I have an old 4-band radio that I use to record sound sometimes. But this covers a lot of the same kind of area. I can use this, I can add static, I can do different things. And let's just move this back to a relatively neutral setting. Now it's a little bit more controlled. There's generally no sound now when I'm not touching it. Now in the middle here are some ground connection. I think these ones are ground connections. So actually when I'm touching the ground on something else, not everything makes a sound. It's a lot of very, very warbling sounds. I suppose it's this there's some LFO going on the input. So if I increase the input to full now, the LFOs are quite slow. Nice, almost like a sort of a noisy kind of tape recorder kind of sound, noisy amp. So there's lots of really crazy noises you can make with it. I just want to also demonstrate what happens if you add a little bit of effects. It can be more pleasing, I think. So now using the Zoya, so we got filter. So that's a low pass filter. So we can tame the sound a little bit because it can be quite harsh. Bit of delay. Bit of reverb. I'll open up the filter again and just use the EQ now on the reverb. See if it makes a difference. Which didn't really make much of a difference because it EQs the tails. I suppose I can use filtering as a kind of EQ as well, but when we have what are sometimes called ring modulation, you take a ring and because the ring has less resistance, of course, hardly none compared to a finger, so the sounds it makes is a bit different from touching it. It just creates a direct connection between creates some interesting sounds. I think moving a shaped conductor across the surface. Let's try to patch some things up a little bit. Now, the top sockets are supposed to be for the output. I'm not sure exactly how that's... I never really sort of philosophized about how things connect together now. I just sort of do it a little bit randomly and see what happens. Because every connection you make seems to have some kind of effect on the sound. At least that seems to create something. Because once something already makes a sound, it's interesting to see what happens with the... Let me change the knobs. Seems to have bypassed the entire user interface here now. Move the delay and reverb again so you can actually hear what's going on. Again, I seem to have bypassed the user interface. It seems to have retained the user interface. And of course, because the jacks are also switches, just plugging something in will change the sound in two ways. First of all, it will create, it will trigger the switch and remove the normalization that is inside the circuit, and also the cable will act as an antenna and affect the sound. So I think it just really lends itself to just experimentation and just trying out the knobs, connecting cables. The sounds I got when I was connecting the cables now wasn't that exciting. I've had more interesting ones before. And just making sure that you always record, because you just never know what will come out of this thing. So, because a lot of sounds are... A lot of the sounds are a bit like this. Then sometimes you just hear, it's like people wailing, you hear wind, you hear birds, you just different things all the time. Oh, there you are, that's a bird there. And yes, it's quite an exciting thing to use because you just never know what's going to happen. And some of the things I like doing with it is, of course, I'm using the processing to create filtering, delay, reverb, and also I use the pitch detector as well on my Zoya to try to find, so it can try to find out what is the pitch that's coming out of the stereo field, and then it will try to play something based on that. That's another thing you can do as well. So there's lots of exciting stuff you can try doing with the landscape stereo field. I'm going to make a few more videos about this, different aspects of it, but I think I'll just stop this one now, just a sort of initial thing. And I hope you enjoyed this. It's quite a quirky thing. I don't think it's for everyone, but it's one of those things that is quite fun to have, and also I think it just looks amazing as well. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in my next one. So goodbye for now. Bye bye.